Welcome to this week's edition of Ask an MS Expert. I'm John Strum, and I'm the host of the Real Talk MS podcast. Each week, Real Talk MS reaches thousands of people in more than 100 countries around the world with the news that people affected by MS need to know. My wife, Jean, lived with progressive MS for 23 years, so I've had a front row seat experiencing all the ways that MS can impact a family. I'm a past member of the International Progressive MS Alliance Scientific Steering Committee. Currently, I'm a district activist leader and trustee for the National MS Society, and I chair the Society's California Government Relations Advisory Committee. The MS Society's Ask an MS Expert webcast is designed to give us a place for the MS community to connect and to connect you with experts who are ready to answer your questions on the topics that impact people affected by MS every day. Please feel free to post your comments and questions on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. MS navigators are online throughout today's program, answering those questions and connecting you to resources. The National MS Society, along with MS activists across the country, works tirelessly to bring forward issues and policies that positively impact people living with MS, focusing on issues like increased funding for MS research, access to quality care, disability rights, and long-term services and support. MS activists take action throughout the year to raise awareness and urge state and federal lawmakers to make policy decisions that will help people with MS live their best lives. We're joined today by Angel Heinz, a member of the Illinois Government Relations Advisory Committee and chair of the National MS Society's Activism Advisory Committee, and Holly Pendell, Associate Vice President of Advocacy at the National MS Society. And we're talking about how advocacy impacts people affected by MS and how participating in advocacy can make a real difference. Angel, Holly, welcome. Thank you both for joining us.
Thank you, John.
Thanks, John.
Holly, why don't we start with definition? How do you define advocacy and why is it important?
Well, at the Society, our advocacy is about helping people impacted by MS to tell their stories and join together to drive change on policy issues that are important to people living with MS on the state and the federal level. So we work on many different areas of impact, things from mental health to access to medication, transportation, just to name a few. And advocacy is so important because, of course, we want to drive change and make a difference on these policies to help people with MS to live their best lives.
Can you explain how advocacy plays a role in protecting the rights and interests of people living with MS?
Sure. So for people with MS, it's about ensuring that laws and regulations that can be uplifting and supportive of people living with multiple sclerosis and other diseases or possibly disabilities are protected and supported at the state and the federal level, and so that they any issues that they might be experiencing that are impacted by the government, that they can be supported and assisted in the best way possible.
Angel, you work alongside the National MS Society, advocating for issues that impact people affected by MS. Can you tell us a little bit about your MS journey and how you first got connected with the National MS Society?
Sure. I soon got involved with the MS Society soon after my own diagnosis with MS in 2012. At first, I was a little nervous or shy about talking about my MS, but I always wanted to do a bit more. I just didn't know what it was. My husband joined the Young Professionals Board in Chicago, and so we started doing fundraising with that board, and soon I joined and became more involved doing that. And from there, I just made lots of friends and it helped me to be able to talk more about my diagnosis, because I was able to meet other young professionals and young women that were living with MS as well. And it was just a wonderful experience for me.
Angel, what was it that made you want to first get involved with MS activism, and why is that important to you?
Sure, that's a great question. I really enjoyed all the fundraising events, and we did Walk MS as well. But I felt like there was more that out there that I wanted to do to give back. And like I said, I wasn't sure what it was, but I knew that there might be something else for me to do. And someone from my local chapter reached out to me and talked to me about the state action days. And so I got invited to the state, my first state action day in Springfield, and with another, I was paired up with someone I already knew from fundraising. And I got to go meet with our local and our state legislators, and I was hooked. I really enjoyed listening to all of the seasoned activists, as I called them, that really knew how to talk about what we needed in our state at the time. And it was really great. And I felt so inspired that, we can make change for people living with MS.
Holly, when I introduced today's episode, I mentioned that MS activists raise awareness about MS and urge our elected officials to make policy decisions that benefit people affected by MS. Can you share some of the successes you've seen that have resulted from MS activism?
Absolutely. I mean, we work on so many issues across the board. I know a lot of our activists have worked on MS research programs and making sure that they receive the funding that they need at the federal level to ensure that research continues at the National Institutes for Health and with the MS research program. And I would say that one of our most recent victories was the Inflation Reduction Act, which so many people participated in, helping us to have that huge success. And we can directly attribute that to years of advocacy by our activists. We worked on access to medication over the last 6 years at the Society, held over 2,000 legislator meetings, sending thousands and thousands of emails to our members of Congress, sharing hundreds of stories and tweets and actions on social media. Our activists participated in commercials. They sent in op-eds and letters to the editor all across the country. By the end, and when those final hearings were being held on Capitol Hill, we had legislators reaching out to us because they were associating our activists with the work, and they knew that we had the stories that they needed, and that our activists were the ones that were going to be directly impacted. So we really attribute that victory to the MS activists sharing their stories and the power behind our activists' work.
Angel, how does the MS Society gather the input of people with MS when it's prioritizing its advocacy efforts?
I mean, the society does such a great job of seeking the input of the activists at every level of the society. As Holly said, seeking out stories of the activists. They are people living with MS with the government relations advisory committees, which I serve on in Illinois, and there's people from all over my state. So there's people sharing their story that may live in a major city, and there's people that live in more rural communities of Southern Illinois that can share their story about access to transportation to even see a doctor. The Activism Advisory Committee, which has people from all over the country. We also send a biannual survey to everyone to seek their input on the policy priorities for the year. So they definitely do such a great job at just letting our voices be heard as activists.
Holly, what are the current priority issues and policies that we're focused on that are going to impact people living with MS? And how is the society involved in those issues?
Sure. So at any given time, the society is involved in dozens dozens of issues all across the country. So many states are working on local and state issues that may be impacting the people of that state and the state legislatures. And certainly we're advocating at the federal level on many issues that are impacting people all across the country. So at the federal level this year, we'll be working to talk with legislators in the coming months about increasing funding for the Department of Veterans Affairs for the MS Centers for Excellence. They provide critical care, education, and research for veterans with MS across the United States. So we'll be having a lot of conversations with our legislators on that issue. And also talking about funding for the MS research program at the Department of Defense. Both of these programs are specifically related to the military, but they both play really important roles in the lives of everyone impacted by MS, as all of us benefit from that research that comes out of both of those areas and the services that are provided by those programs. We'll also be talking with lawmakers about ensuring air travel accessibility within the reauthorization of the Federal Aviation Administration. So that reauthorization only comes up every 5 years. So this is our chance to talk with our lawmakers and really make an impact on how the FAA does business. And many Americans with disabilities are challenged by travel, and specifically by air travel. So while a great deal has already been done, we think a great deal can be done to continue to improve air travel and transportation to make it more accessible and make the lives easier of people who are traveling with disabilities.
Angel, I introduced you as the chair of the Activism Advisory Committee for the National MS Society. Can you explain what the Activism Advisory Committee does?
Sure. The Activism Advisory Committee advises the society on how to use public policy to change the lives of people affected with MS. We help to identify current emerging issues, like the ones that Holly just spoke on, so that we can advocate at the federal and state levels on these important issues. And the committee is great. It's members from across the country, but there's members from the Board of Trustees, the National Board of Directors, other MS activists like myself, community leaders, and there's also a few society staff members that serve on the committee as well. We meet quarterly. We had our first in-person meeting together this past fall after a few years of just meeting virtually. And it's a wonderful, awesome group to get together and just talk about all of the things that affect people living with MS.
Angel, can you share an experience you've had as an MS activist that really made an impact on you and perhaps other people living with MS as well?
Sure. One story I'd love to share is one of the public policy conferences that I attended in DC. And that conference usually brings together numerous activists from across the country where we meet, we talk about our priorities, and then we go on the Hill to meet with legislators to advocate. And my favorite year was the year that we were talking about the Affordable Care Act and making sure that we have access to quality, affordable care for people living with MS. And that was when I really was like, this is awesome. I just love talking to my legislators, but also just there was like hundreds of us there talking about it. And I truly felt that we made change, not just for people living with MS, but for all people in our country to provide healthcare coverage. And I mean, it was a pivotal moment for me because I then decided I wanted to make a pivot and a career change and do policy work. And I really feel like becoming an MS advocate not only led for me being chair of the Activism Advisory Committee, but I went on to grad school, got a public policy degree, and now I work doing disability policy with Reed Foundation. So yeah, I've been truly blessed to be a MS activist.
Holly, we have a lot of people watching. what are some of the ways that they can get involved in MS advocacy? And I hope you'll also talk about how someone can get involved as a district activist leader.
Absolutely. We're always looking for new MS activists, and there's lots of opportunities to become engaged. So we like to talk about there's an opportunity for everyone, no matter your interest level or the amount of time that you have to give to the volunteer opportunity. We talk a lot about a ladder of engagement with our advocacy work, and we like to say that there's a level on that ladder for everyone's interest. The most easy and simple way to become engaged is to become part of our activist network. So that's a simple sign up where you'll receive email or text updates about upcoming events, opportunities, or you hear from us when we really need you to take action and reach out to your legislators about important bills or policies that are coming up, possibly in front of your state legislature or at the federal level in Congress. So these are really short alerts. It takes just a few moments to complete these alerts. So you'll kind of enter your information about where you live, and everything will pre-populate. So you'll get the information about that member of Congress, and we will have even written a small email already for you to send to your legislator. All that we ask is that you take a few moments and write a few sentences to personalize that letter with some information about you, maybe a little bit about how that issue impacts you or a story you have related to that issue, because that makes it so much more powerful for your legislator to hear directly about how you as a constituent are influenced by that policy issue. And from there are many more ways to get involved. Angel mentioned the government relations advisory committees. We have those in several states, and they help us do a lot of our state work. And then at the federal level, John and Angel are both district activist leaders. Our district activist leader program is a program where you can we encourage you to build a personal relationship with your congressman and their legislative staff. You are kind of the ambassador for the Multiple Sclerosis Society with that legislator. And you really help educate them on issues that are important to people with MS and get to know them firsthand. And we share with you each month a little project that will help you get to know them better and to share important information with them, and maybe about a policy issue or awareness issue related to this society. It can kind of be done on your own time, which is, I think, what's really great about the program. So you can do it maybe in the evening or catch up on that work on the weekend. But there's lots more about that program on our website, as well as the application for the program. So it's pretty simple and can be done on your own time when you have that free time to take. But we'd love for more people to become involved. And like I said, no matter the amount of time that you have, we have an opportunity for you.
Mm-hmm.
Angel, what would you say to someone who's watching right now and maybe thinking about becoming an MS activist?
Well, I would say go ahead and sign up online, like Holly just suggested, but make sure you're following the MS Society, all of their social media, on Twitter, following the MS Activist hashtag, and that right there, you'll start to see if you're still not ready or not sure about what you can do, you'll be able to see what others are doing. But there's something for everyone if you're an introvert or an extrovert. So I think signing up would be the quickest thing to do, or you could reach out to the society. You can contact me. I'm sure they could get you my info. To talk to someone. I feel like talking to someone who's currently an activist could also help you figure out where you could get involved.
Well, Angel, thanks so much for sharing your experience and being a voice for the MS community. And Holly, you shared some great information about the issues and policies that affect people living with MS, as well as how someone can get involved in MS advocacy. I'd like to ask each of you to share the top 3 takeaways that you'd like our viewers to remember. Angel, why don't you start us off?
Sure. Make sure you're following the society on social media and their Twitter account. Also, there's lots of staff available. You can reach out to the MS Navigator. They will help you find what's right for you. Just, it's a journey. It's an MS journey, right? Everybody's journey is different, and just not to let fear guide you, and there you will find where you fit as an activist. I'm sure your voice will be heard, because everyone wants to hear it.
Holly?
Sure. So I think, my first action step would be for everyone, if you've got your phone on you right now, if it's in your back pocket, take it out. This is going to be the easiest thing you do all day. But if you want to become an MS activist and join our activist network, right now, you can take out your phone and text MS Activist, all one word, to 52886, and you'll immediately receive a text back that will guide you through becoming an MS Activist. And you can literally accomplish that in just 2 minutes. And you'll already be signed up for our MS Activist Network, and you can start engaging today with us. And we'd love to have you. So that's your first takeaway. I think what's really important for you to understand is that no matter your relationship to multiple sclerosis, you have a story to tell, and there's such power in your story. Legislators want to hear from you. They want to hear how you've been impacted. They want to hear from their constituents. There's just so much power in those stories, and they can really result in significant change. They can really drive really big change and improvements for people living with MS and others across the country, just like the Inflation Reduction Act did this year for people with access to affordable medications. And again, like I said, even if you just have a couple hours a month, we have opportunities for you to engage with our advocacy program, even on your own time when you can find it, whether that be maybe in the evenings or on the weekends. We have opportunities that will meet your needs. And I just encourage everybody to give it a try. We have lots of virtual opportunities, so you can do it right from the comfort of your own home, or if you would like to do more and get out and be in person, we have those opportunities that exist for you too. And I'd be happy to answer questions, and we have staff members located all across the country that would love to hear from you and be able to tell you more about our programs.
Well, thank you both for sharing your expertise with us. Let's continue answering a few more questions from our viewers. Holly, Nick is wondering whether you have to know all about politics and government to be involved in MS activism.
Absolutely not. So all you need to do is to sign up and show up, and maybe showing up just means showing up on your computer screen right from the comfort of your couch. We have lots of online events throughout the year. You don't need any experience at all, just a relationship to MS, and bring your own experiences to the table to become an MS activist. There are several virtual opportunities. We have almost always a quarterly event that you can come and join and kind of try on the advocacy hat and give it a try, and bring nothing with you. Just bring yourself, Nick.
Angel, we heard from Andy, and Andy wants to know what types of things activists do and what the time commitment is like.
Sure, completely understand that, Andy. I mean, the time commitment is whatever you want it to be, because if you are just sending an email or a tweet out to your legislator, that just takes a couple minutes to do out of your day. But if you want to become more involved and join if there's a government relations advisory committee in your state, that really it's a monthly meeting. My monthly meeting is a lunch call once a month, depending on your state. It could be in the evening. They're very flexible with their time, with your time. If you're doing, there's, like Holly said, there's lots of virtual events. Your state action days, where you may go to your state capital, that's virtual in some states too. If you're back in person, that's a day out of your schedule. So there's a lot of ways you can be involved at all different levels of time.
Holly, I think I heard you start to answer this question already, but Kathleen contacted us and she wants to know if there's a way she can get involved in digital activism. So how can someone connect with the MS movement through social media?
Absolutely. So our social media program has really grown even over the last year. The first step would be to connect with MS Activists on Twitter, and that's our hashtag MS Activist and at MS Activists on Twitter. And we share lots of information through our Twitter account. We also have MS Activists on Instagram and Facebook that are constantly sharing out information about our programs and our activities. But once you've joined that MS Activist Network, you'll also be prompted to share information through social media channels, and you'll learn about opportunities to reach out to your legislators and to share information with them through social media. A lot of them engage with our activists through social media, and they're looking to hear from you in that way, and they like to hear from their constituents on those channels. So we really encourage you to engage in that way. And if you're already engaged in that way, then we would love to have you amplifying our message as well.
Well, I want to thank everyone who submitted questions today, and Holly and Angel. I want to thank you both for being with us.
Well, thank you, John.
Thank you, John.
Before we close, I want to remind you that the National MS Society's MS Navigator team is your best partner when it comes to connecting you to the very best information and resources on living with MS. You can reach an MS Navigator by phone, email, or through the Society's website by chat. For information and resources on MS, please visit the Society's website. You'll find research updates and news, information on connection programs like self-help groups, and you'll find ways for you to get involved. You'll hear about upcoming events that are taking place near you. Remember, you can connect with the National MS Society and others affected by MS on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and LinkedIn. And I hope you'll join me every week on the Real Talk MS podcast, where I continue the conversation that we start here. You'll find Real Talk MS at realtalkms.com, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, or wherever you find your favorite podcasts. I'd like to thank Holly and Angel for joining us today. Please remember that a recording of this webcast will be available at the Society's website at nationalmssociety.org/MSExpert, as well as on Facebook and YouTube. I hope you'll join us at this same time for next week's edition of Ask an MS Expert. You can always find our upcoming program topics on the National MS Society's website. And now I have a favor to ask each of you. Getting your feedback on today's webcast is important. So if you're watching on Facebook Live, you'll see a link to a survey pinned to the comments section. And on YouTube, you'll find that link in the program description. Completing the survey makes a real difference. The information you provide helps us continuously improve, and it helps shape future programs. The survey takes just 1 minute, so I hope you'll take a minute to fill it out. On behalf of Angel Heinz, Holly Pendell, and the National MS Society, I want to thank you once again for joining us. Please stay safe and make healthy choices.